Well, hello everyone. This is Chase Segmiller again with the M42 Adventures podcast. I'll be your host today. Rick's just off running around getting everything handled before he goes on, a year-long extended vacation off in Australia and Thailand and all those fun experiences that are off on that side of the world. So, I'll be doing this interview. Today we have on Matt Coffey from the Second Amendment Foundation. Now, one of the reasons why I want to talk to him is I'm not completely aware of all of the different, legal issues and things that we face as law-abiding gun owners and our Second Amendment rights. And so Matt from the Second Amendment Foundation is going to answer or possibly not answer all of my questions. Some, questions that I may ask might not be available or within, his realm of knowledge. So we'll see what goes on and I'll try to get as many things that we're all thinking about answered as possible and see where we all can support the initiative and the movement and protect our rights. So let's jump right in. Here we are. I'm Chase Segmiller with the M42 Adventures podcast. And today we have a very interesting guest. I've been working on having somebody from the Second Amendment Foundation on here. And today we have Matt Coffey, right? That's how you say your last
That's
name?
right.
Coffey? That's
Just
an
like
awesome
that.
last name.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So, where are you located actually?
So I live in Memphis, but the organization is based out of Bellevue, Washington.
Okay, cool. And then, just so our listeners know, what exactly is the Second Amendment Foundation?
So the Second Amendment Foundation is a 501c3 that focuses on gun rights litigation and public education. So basically, we sue the people who don't want you to have guns.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
pretty much how that goes.
And when it comes to all that, when something comes in like litigation or anything like that, like how do you usually pursue it? Does it have to fall into a certain guideline for you to even go and assist with it?
Yeah, sometimes it just depends. There's, three or four different tiers, I guess. What's gonna affect the most amount of people. Is it a state? Is it a federal? Is it nationwide kind of thing? Others are challenging, for instance, red flag laws because there's numerous red flag laws in states across the country. And then the 18 to 20 issue, carry and permit purchase issue is, that's a big one. I think we've got 10 or 11 of those cases around assault weapons bans, basically anything that's going to be the best avenue for the most people. That is one of our strategies, is to make sure that we're going to win a case that has a good set of precedent, in a good way, so that if another case comes up or another assault weapons ban or what have you comes up, then we've got good precedent to back up that case if we decide to pursue it.
All right, all right. Okay. And then I was actually reading through a few things when it comes down to the Second Amendment Foundation, and it kind of breaks down like four different areas in which you address or kind of like deal with Second Amendment violations or things that might be against our rights or our regulation to be able to defend ourselves. And it said that so you have legal action, obviously you talked about that, and then it says education. What type of education do you provide for people that are dealing with issues and possibly have questions about their Second Amendment rights?
So the education component is we try and do that with any release we put out, anything from that avenue. We are working on a program. I can tell you that that's something that we're looking to do in the near future. So basically we want to inform people at any level. Whether you're an entry level to the Second Amendment, I guess first time gun owner, let's say, to someone like yourself who spends days at the range every week. The idea being that everybody's going to be on that same level, and we're going to be able to speak to each of those audiences, and still provides an education component to why we're doing what we're doing, or what the purpose is, or maybe what the ramifications are if we don't win the case, or if we do win the case.
Okay, okay. And then when it comes down to this third aspect, research, I was kind of like thinking about that, and I get that there's a lot to be done, but do you do specific like third party type of research for certain things that are happening in the gun industry?
So not that I'm aware of. I think the
Okay.
research component came in at the very beginning. So SAP's been around for 51 years now, since 1974. And I think that was initially there was a lot of research going on as to, why gun bans and why there was so much gun control and things like that back in 74. McDonald versus the city of Chicago, which was in 2010, I believe, that was a SAF case. And that's the case that allows SAF and other groups like us to even be able to sue the municipalities and states around the country for gun control, gun control infringement, gun infringement, whatever, however you want to however you want to say it. But that's the case that allows us to go into wherever, Washington or California, for instance, where, obviously California's got a lot of cases, but that allows us to go into those states and those municipalities and file those cases. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to.
Right.
Nobody be able to.
Right. I get that. And then public awareness, like what's your biggest avenue for, getting the message out there, getting people to understand? I mean, coming from, you know, being in the gun industry and running an academy and trying to put information out there when it comes to guns and how to utilize them. I mean, even take them apart. There's so much regulation behind that, and everywhere you got to tiptoe. You're on eggshells. How do you get all that information out there and still, like not get banned from everywhere?
Very carefully. So, we doing, podcasts like this, Chase, honestly, we do several of these, a couple a week typically, press releases, any kind of media outreach. And then of course, as you well know, reaching out to us on social media. We've got a new social media, digital media director who's running our social media now, and doing some other digital stuff for us, videos, things like that. And that seems to be a growth area for us for sure. And he's been on not quite a year yet, so that's fairly new for the organization to do that aspect of it.
And we talked earlier. Obviously, you're not a lawyer, so we won't go into any
No.
kind of like legal issues. But what do you think the biggest issue that we're facing that threatens our Second Amendment rights right now? Like, what's the main circling of the sharks right now?
It seems to be obviously assault weapons bans are big.
Wow.
That seems to be high on everybody's list, and I'd say that the biggest factor there is the permit to purchase, right? The permit, just like Colorado just passed. I think what you're going to see is, we've got seven actually assault weapons ban cases around the country, and as you saw in
7.
Snope, seven, yes,
Wow.
seven assault. We actually have more than 55 cases, probably closer to 60 now, but we've got 7 assault weapons bans alone. And Snope, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Snope. That was just the Supreme Court said no, we're not going to take it, but even the dissenting judge said, what was it? Kavanaugh said, we're going to take one probably in the next term or two. So there's a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel. But they relisted Snope. I want to say it was over a dozen times, closer to
Okay.
15, I think, where they relisted it for conference and finally came out with the ruling there. But I think that would probably be that and the 18 to 20. That the 18 to 20 purchase, carry, and permit. That would be probably those two would be at the top, I think, of the list.
Yeah. No, I think so. And when it comes down to the 18 to 20, what are the biggest regulations there that you're kind of fighting against?
Purchase,
Purchase.
18 to 20 purchase. Yeah, purchase, and then permit, obviously, and carry. It's they courts around the country have, or at least have found that they are quote unquote part of the people. So if you're part of the people, then why should you not be able to exercise your full Second Amendment rights?
Yeah.
And that's a big issue. And I don't understand that. How can you be at 18? I could have gotten married. I could have, fought in the military. Even military personnel who are in the military who aren't 21
Yep.
can't purchase a handgun. They're required to for their job, but
Yep.
they can't for personal protection, in their personal lives.
It's very strange because it's almost like, in Utah, we have the provisional concealed firearm permit, right? So an 18-year-old can have a concealed firearm permit, but they can't actually go and get the pistol. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so they have
Exactly.
to have somebody go get it for them and then give it to them. And it's like, and they can have it, but they can't buy it. It just doesn't make a whole bunch of sense, And so,
No, and
um,
that's what we're fighting. That's one of the
yeah,
issues that we're fighting, and fighting hard. I think, like I said, I think we've got 10 or 11 of those cases across the country,
I
and
think
just filed a couple not too long ago.
in the real, long aspect of it, like, you're an adult, you can be tried for any crime that you commit. Like it's like you now have to be law abiding, in order to, kind of run with the system. And so it kind of goes hand in hand, in my opinion. So I don't really know where that all came
Yeah,
from, but
yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know where it started, but it's obviously not constitutional.
hmm,
You can't say that you can do all these things, but there's one thing you can't. Just because you are not 21,
right.
which I guess, yeah, that's if you're part of the people, you should be able to full exercise your full Second Amendment rights, period, for personal protection or for any other reason you want to, for that matter. If you want to just carry a pistol, just to carry a pistol.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, while I would always recommend, definitely training and learning from a good instructor and things like that, it's still your right, and so, you definitely need to practice it, but get out there and make sure you do it safely. Um,
Absolutely.
when it comes down to our listeners, I kind of, now that the Second Amendment Foundation is, deals with, obviously all these regulations we're talking about and protecting our Second Amendment rights. What do we do to assist with the Second Amendment Foundation? I know that you guys have membership. I don't know what that consists of, and what that does, for you in general, or if it's just for like your own legal aspects if something happens. I'm not sure. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
So, our members and supporters are all they're the bedrock of what we do. Members, supporters, corporate partners. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And I'm happy to say that actually more than 80% of every dollar donated to SAF goes straight back into our mission. There's not a lot of organizations out there who can say that, or that can say that, I guess you'd say. But 80%. So you give us a dollar, 80 cents of it goes straight back into the mission to fight against the gun control across the country.
I like it. I like it. Now, I put down here. I kind of want to know a little bit about this is it gun rights policy
Gun Rights
coalition
Policy Conference. Yes,
conference?
GRPC. So GRPC is a conglomeration of scholars, advocates, and Second Amendment influencers who speak on various topics. It's a 2-day event, with some, September 26th through 28th, actually in your neck of the woods in Salt Lake City,
Yeah,
this
yeah, no,
year.
I'm
So,
I'm
and
really
yeah,
intrigued about that. I'm almost
yeah,
like thinking about going up there and seeing what's going
yeah.
on. You
It's
know?
it's a free event, so you don't have to pay to get in. Lunch is provided on Saturday, but you'll hear from some great Second Amendment, some guys who have really been in the fight for a long time, and in various topics, from attorneys to scholars to, like I said, influencers. Sarah Weaver from Ruby Ridge, she'll be there. She's going to be one of the speakers. You'll hear from politicians, because it's put on by SAF and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. So it's a SAF sister company, that's a C4. So there's just a lot of information in 2 days, and you really come out rejuvenated. And all right, this is what we need to do to fight for our Second Amendment rights, and here's why. A lot of good information.
All right, all right. Now, I'm sure lots of people want to know about this, but it's more in regulation to, something that's in the big beautiful bill. You know, Now, I don't understand why suppressors are even regulated the way that they are at all, like, because they're not a firearm. There's nothing about them that is harmful. You know what I mean? So it really weirds me out that they even are. But written into that big beautiful bill was a regulation that, kind of passed. It's kind of a little bit of shift to what was originally written in there. But like, what is that all about? And what are we looking to do when it comes down to that, any of those parts of the National Firearms Act?
So, we put out a statement last week, once the bill passed, and
Hmm.
that statement was along with the American Suppressor Association, NRA, and FPC. And basically what it said was our intent to file a lawsuit on that. So basically, it, the regulation was a tax scheme. So the only reason it existed was to for as a tax scheme. That's basically, and a registration scheme.
Yeah.
So when you remove the tax, then what's the purpose at this point? You know what I mean? So the goal is ultimately to get rid of the NFA altogether, because if it has no teeth, then why is it even there? You know what I mean? If there's
Right.
no regulation and there's no tax, then why is it even a part of anything? Why do you have to register? Why can't it just be? And that's, for short barreled firearms, and suppressors, silencers as well. So the ultimate goal is to get it gone, and we are going to file a suit on that with those groups here in the near future.
Is it gonna be so? This is kind of the funny part about that whole thing, right? Is the suit gonna be somewhere around the lines of like this can't exist anymore because you said it was a tax? It's not anymore because we're not charging any money, and so therefore it is just a filing registry for the regulation of firearms. Like that's all it
Right.
would be at this point.
If I could answer that, I would, but I don't know. I don't know honestly.
Okay.
What
I'm like,
that's going to
I
look
just don't
like.
know how, because they kind of did it in a weird way,
Yeah,
and so
no,
it
it's
kind of
absolutely, it's
makes it weird
absolutely,
to
it's not.
strange to
It
attack.
is a weird, yeah, and so there's some talks. Our attorneys are talking and trying to figure that very thing out. I think is what does it look like? What does the suit look like? And what are we going to be fighting? That obviously the ultimate goal is to get rid of it, but I don't know that as far as the strategy of how they're gonna, what they're gonna file against. I'm not sure.
I honestly like, I feel like there's a little part of me that's like, I think she shot herself in the foot when she's like, we'll just take the money away, and now it's
Yeah, I
nothing.
don't, I don't know.
So,
I can't even pretend to think, or understand what goes through a politician's mind. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I guess there was reasoning behind it. The ultimate, it's not exactly obviously what gun owners wanted. They wanted it gone.
yeah,
Firearms owners around the country, and that's absolutely correct, right? But at the same time, I think you get a little bit, and that's a step in the right direction, and then you get a little bit more, and then eventually you reach that ultimate goal, which is to get rid of the NFA altogether, which I think you know would be great. Obviously, I'd hate to say I think it's going to happen because I'm not going to predict
yeah. No,
what goes on, but
there's just, I mean, there's things included in there that are just, I don't know if they'll ever let go. Some of them, yeah, but I don't know if they'll ever let go of it completely. That's really the
right.
big thing. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
they
I mean,
they want to
but like
ban assault weapons, which I don't even know what you categorize that as. You know what I mean? And so full automatic, firearms, like they just really won't ever let that happen. And I don't really see how there's any big difference. You know what I mean? I get what they're behind as far as it being able to lay down a lot of fire, but that's it. That's all you're really running with, and there's a lot of different platforms that allow that.
right, and I again, the speculation there is rampant.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss, obviously, I can talk about the NFA just because there is no tax now. So
Yeah.
if there's no tax, then what's the purpose?
What is
Besides,
it? Yeah.
obviously, besides just a registration scheme, is that the
Exactly.
whole point of it now? Is so they know,
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, I really liked, I forget what the politician's name is, but the way that he explained the tax stamp, and he had various, items to show, like this is the tax stamp, this is the serial number, and it's like this is all it is. And then it says, here's the money. So which monies are you paying? And that's the basis of it, is it's got a serial number and a stamp, and then you pay money. So realistically, it's kind of funny how it all gets dressed out. But I also want to know, you guys won some recent cases in California.
Yeah. So actually, yesterday, we Junior Sports Magazines v. Bonta, which was a First Amendment case, actually talking about advertising with firearms and components to youth. Basically, they had firearms ads in a magazine that was geared toward youth competition shooters, and the California code said and law said no, you can't do that. But the Ninth Circuit ruled actually the second time. They ruled once. The district court sent it back to district court, and the district court said, "Nah, we don't think you meant that." And then so the Ninth Circuit came out yesterday and said, "No, we actually this is what we mean. We said what we mean. We mean what we say. This is what it is. It's unconstitutional." So that was the most recent one there. Not too long ago, same in California, surprisingly out of the Ninth Circuit, they struck down the one gun a month rule, which stated that you can't purchase more than one firearm in a month's time, 30 days, I believe. But they struck that down, so that's gone. Eventually there, and then California, obviously, like we talked about before, is where it's kind of the balloon test for the rest of the nation when it comes to gun control.
Yeah.
They put it in California, and then if it takes and if it gets passed, then you'll see a lot of the other states do that, like Washington and wherever else that follows suit with that. So it's kind of like a balloon test in California. And I want to say at one point I think we had I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's close to 15 cases alone in California. Like I said, anything from that First Amendment case to the concealed carry, which actually, now they're requiring that the municipalities and counties around the state now allow for non-residents to apply for a purchase or a permit to carry, which, that's another win in California. So that's 3 wins in California in the past, what, 2 months,
Right.
which is surprising, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And so we were talking a little bit about a few things. Obviously, constitutional carry has been implemented. So, you should, in any state in the United States of America, be able to carry a firearm for personal protection. One, right? Now, is that something that realistically is possible in California right now?
I No, not the way the law. No, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not even going to
Right.
try. But not to my limited understanding of it. No. Um, you
Like
know,
if you were, thinking that you were constitutionally okay and you went there and you got pulled over and you happen to have a firearm that I would say isn't California, allowed,
compliant.
higher capacity, whatever it is, it's
Right.
the exact same gun, just holds more rounds. And then would they just take it and destroy it? I mean, that's pretty much what happens, right? At that point,
Yeah.
because it's not illegal, but they wouldn't
I'm
want you to
not
have it.
sure. Yeah, I don't know, and I'd be remiss to even try and answer that question,
Okay.
honestly, Chase.
I was just thinking about it because I was like, man, I'm like, it's still in the United States. Obviously, I was just in Hawaii, and I was like, I'm not even going to try that, but I kind of want to just to, see if they'll let me just have it. Obviously, not carry it every day, but shoot it because we talked about something I want to do, here in the near future. But um, I just don't know, how that all goes about. It's very even for me in the aspects of trying to go through all of the different laws from different states is I've traveled a lot and carried the entire time. There's all kinds of different laws for every single regulation that goes through, and I'm like, there should be at least one, like blanket rule, like because you're gonna have people traveling and there's certain people that just won't not carry for personal protection. Like they're like, no,
Right.
I'm not gonna take that away from myself because you say I can't travel to your state, right? And so, like, in retrospect, if there was just something where we had, just locked in a case inside your car, you know, separate from ammo, if it's not your personal protection firearm, right? So, like, all those things safely secured so that they're not easily accessible and then utilized by somebody who, isn't a law abiding citizen. And so, like, I understand like where the regulations come from, but also if we don't have an idea of what should be allowed everywhere, to like allow us to mitigate how we're gonna, get ourselves from A to B without breaking all kinds of laws and possibly take having our rights taken away because of some small infraction that we weren't even aware of, and for to ask the average citizen to go through all of these different regulations of every state. I mean, I have a book that I give to some people when I do like a CFP course, and I'm like, look, this is the different regulations, and if you see here, like this is just slightly different than this other state, and it's right next to each other. But realistically, you're going to have to adjust this and this here and to go here, and it's like at some point it just seems ridiculous, when you have to go through all of those little loopholes. People just give up.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we do what we do, right? Why we do at SAF, why we're doing what we're doing is to hopefully, make that a little bit easier for people and ensure that they can have their, exercise their full Second Amendment rights and provide the self defense protection that they want to for themselves and their family.
Right, right. Now, do you team up with like companies that like have a lot of training and things like that? Like, do you support companies that are specific about training after you start adopting your ability to carry your own firearm?
No, we don't. No, not that I'm
No.
aware of. We don't.
Okay. When
We
it
have
comes to
corporate
training,
partners. Yeah,
okay.
but for as far as training, I think that's something that our new membership director is working on, is working with the training facilities and I'm not sure where that stands.
Right.
But I think that's something that we're looking to get into a little bit more. Is to spread the word that way as well.
And is there anything in the near future that you see that's that's something that everybody kind of should be aware of and kind of working towards if they're you know gun owning Americans?
Yeah, and I think again, back to the assault weapons ban, right? That the bans across the country. Like I
Hmm.
said, we had 7 of those cases. I would imagine that hopefully one of our cases gets picked up by the Supreme Court in the not too distant future. And I think that would then hopefully allow for a fast and hard rule for once and for all to say this is illegal, or the unconstitutional. Illegal is not the right word. It's unconstitutional to ban assault weapons, quote unquote.
So when you say that, hopefully one of our cases will make it into the Supreme Court, how does that get into the Supreme Court? Like, I mean, obviously you file a lawsuit and stuff.
Right.
When is it important enough to be addressed by the Supreme Court?
So we file. It's called a, and I'm going to try and say this the right way, a
Hmm.
writ of certiorari. And
Oh,
I
I don't
don't
know.
think so. A petition for certain,
Yeah.
and so basically what that is you send something to the Supreme Court and say, hey, this is what happened in this district court, or this circuit court, that we want to challenge, and the Supreme Court will look at it and say, yeah, maybe, or nah, I don't think so. It's obviously a lot more detailed than that, and there's a lot more a lot more precedent, a lot more to it than that. But that's basically the gist of it. Is we petition the Supreme Court and say, we think you need to hear this case because,
Hmm.
and they'll either say yes or no, just like with Snope. And so they'll list it for conference, and then you've got to get it through conference before the full panel will hear it. And like I said, Snope was relisted. I want to say it was more than a dozen times. I'm not exactly sure how many, but it was a bunch before they finally came back and said, yeah, we're not going to hear it. But we don't, we think we're going to hear one. We wouldn't be surprised if we take one in the next term or two, which is what we're working toward now. Obviously, is getting one of those cases in front of the Supreme Court.
Are they all kind of similar, or do they differ in all kinds of different ways?
Each case is unique. One overarching area, but it's unique in the way it's presented in each case. So it's
Okay.
one overarching assault weapons ban, but it may be an assault weapons, for instance, not only assault weapons but magazine capacity. So we're
Right.
challenging both of those laws, in Illinois for one of our cases, let's say, versus somewhere else it may just be assault weapons. So
Right.
it just kind of varies. It's case to case basis.
Okay. Okay. Now, is there do you see is there specifics to like where you see more gun regulation, uh, you know, people filing for more lawsuits for regulation? Like, does it does it happen around specific areas in the country, or is it just all over the place?
Well, I mean, I think you look at a map and you look at
Right.
the people in power in certain states, and I think you can see that those states are going to be more or less friendly, I'd say, to gun rights than others. California, obviously, Washington come to mind. The Northeast, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, those types of states would definitely come straight to mind when there are more gun control there than other states, like where I am in Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah. No, how is the regulation in Tennessee, by the way? I used to live right outside of Memphis, actually.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, anything. We got the constitutional carry in the state, and you can. There are very very few restrictions, obviously, besides the federal restrictions. It's pretty liberal here when it comes to your gun rights.
That's what I figured. I was like, from what I remember, it was, not too much different than Utah, and there's one
Nah,
beautiful thing about Utah is that, they kind of leave it up to you, in a way. The fact that you can just go buy a gun from someone else and just be like, here's your money and walk away with it is very interesting. I mean, there's some parts of me that's like, well, I mean, as awesome as that is, I mean, like, from the person selling it, that's kind of frightening. Like, it's just, you never know. But
right?
I totally understand, because that's the whole point, is that it's not supposed to be regulated, and it's written that way very specifically, and I think that people kind of get around the idea that, it's the guns that do all the violence, and it's like, no. I'm like, technically I could go build one, no problem. It'd take me a little bit of time, but I could go build one, and that doesn't even exist in any records or anything anywhere, and nobody be the wiser. But I would, technically, like, that's breaking the law, in certain aspects. And so it's like, where do we draw the line? And that's the point where I'm kind of at, is I haven't spent a whole bunch of years dealing with them, especially because I live in Utah, but really understanding what kind of regulations we have, and how they affect everyone else. And so it's something that I've been delving into and why I ended up contacting you guys. And I'm like, what do we, where did it even come from? It's like the suppressor thing. I look at the pure facts. It's like, okay, it's a
Right.
suppressor. It makes the sound less, of the projectile coming out because of how it adjusts the gas pressures coming out of the muzzle. And I'm like, how does that have anything to do with anything when it comes to a firearm? You know what I mean? Like, it's a tube and it attaches to the end of a muzzle. That's it. I just
Right.
don't understand that at all. That
Yeah.
part, I I can't even. I'm not even behind it at all.
Well,
It just doesn't make
and
any
there was
sense.
there was a case not too long ago, and I can't remember where it is, and you'll have to forgive my memory.
All right. I just want to take a minute real quick and step away from this conversation, go over a few things that we have going on here at M42 Adventures and our online community, the Genesis. I do want to talk about another one of our giveaways. Now, we're at a little over 260 members in the Genesis online community from M42 Adventures. And it's really starting to sprout off. We have our weekly challenges that everyone's really getting involved with. There's a lot of people that are starting to, post and hold themselves accountable for their workouts and the fitness channel. Rick's currently, what does he call it, mentoring some people on the financial channel, getting them out of debt and making passive income to start living the lives of their dreams. And a lot of other things that are going on in a lot of the different channels. And there's a lot to kind of just go over and learn from in there, not just the mentors, not just the channels. There are areas that you're just going to help you grow just all by yourself and make new friends. So definitely jump on there. We're going to be doing another giveaway when we hit 500 members. So you need to be a member in order to win. So invite all your friends, family members, just basically everyone. We're open to everyone, and we have things in there that are of value for anyone. So that's definitely great. Now, as we're talking about the Second Amendment and the Second Amendment Foundation conversation we're having right now, I want everybody to be aware that we do have real risks in losing our Second Amendment and gun rights, and we shouldn't infringe upon it, and we need to do everything that we can to secure it in our lives and the future lives of the people that are growing up in the world right now. So definitely get out there, find out what types of things are happening in your local area when it comes down to firearm regulations. Make sure you're in the know, and if there's something wrong, get out there and make sure your voice is heard. And that's all that we can do. We are the people. We are the ones that basically have the last say in all of these things. And unless we say anything, nothing will get changed, and we definitely need to do our part. So let's jump back in it, learn some more stuff. Here we go. No, and that's one of the things too, is there's so much out there, and I think that every state has adopted so many different things so many different areas that's where it becomes the hardest part. Is like you literally have to go after each little thing in every single area to really get rid of a lot of the rules, because they're all so slightly different that you have to basically get a statement for each one of those little teeny fractions of
Yeah,
law.
in some instances, I think you're right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So where do you draw that line? I
right,
guess is the question. How do they? It is an infringement. People want to infringe on our Second Amendment rights anyway, anytime that they can, in
right,
certain states, right, in certain places, and they're
yeah,
going to do whatever they can to, just like in the First Amendment case, they're going to say that you can't advertise a firearm or related type components to somebody under 18 because why? That's a First
right.
Amendment, that's a free speech issue, but it's because it has to do with the Second Amendment. They're going to try and stop it, and
Now,
and they were unsuccessful, at least.
you might have numbers on this, and it's one of the reasons why I think that the aspect about the magazine issue is kind of funny. Like, what is the numbers of how many under adolescent people are involved in shooting sports? I mean, it's pretty huge.
Yeah,
We
especially
run
on the
just the
trap
high
side.
school rodeo, and that's pretty massive. Just out here, and that's just the
And
rodeo people.
yeah, I don't have numbers. I wouldn't have any numbers on that, but I
Yeah,
do know it's big. I
yeah.
know it's actually a growing sport,
Hmm.
especially trap, like high school trap shooting.
Yeah,
you know,
huge.
and things like that. A big organization, a big component, you know. But that's, you know, as far as numbers now, I wouldn't even
Yeah.
begin.
No,
It's
and
a
I
lot.
was trying to wrap my head around it. And I'm like, you know, when it comes to some of the schools around here and around some of the, I'm sure around Tennessee, a lot of kids shoot and do that as a sport in high school. And
Yeah.
it's enough that I don't know why it would almost be like, you know, taken back from you making some money if you didn't promote to people that are involved in that shooting sport that are of that
Right.
age, you
Yeah,
know?
and I know that the Grands is in, I want to say, Illinois, and that draws tens of thousands of people,
Right.
you know, for the finals, for the high school trap shooting. And actually, we'll be there. Have a booth set up there, but regardless, it is a huge sport, you
Mhm.
know, and it's something that's definitely growing, which is a good thing, right? Is you want to start you know, these kids younger, you know, get them involved, get them, you know, started and loving the shooting sport, so that when our time is gone, right, there's somebody
Yeah.
that's carrying the torch. You know, that's
Well,
kind of
yeah.
the idea, right?
Yeah, that's the huge thing is like, you know, get him in there doing that, and as much as because it can translate over to everything. You know, you build up the comfortability and the skill in multiple gun, you know, aspects, multiple disciplines, and then that goes over into if you end up, you know, wanting to care for personal protection, then you just take all of those skills that you've, you know, addressed and trigger manipulation, all those, and apply them to this. And then if you want to go hunt, you know, then new discipline, you know, learn that over here. But ultimately, like you're already comfortable with the idea of shooting, you know, from
Right. Yeah,
competition,
then the
different things that
safety,
you're doing.
yeah,
Yeah,
and the
and you
safety
understand the
aspect, you
safety
know,
aspects.
back to what you were talking about at the beginning, the safety aspect is already
Yeah,
built in there. So it's
exactly.
something that you just, you know, is second nature at that point, right? You
Yeah,
know, from starting that age.
and I got a question from somebody the other day where it was like, you know, do you go out shooting for target practice or is it, you know, all for personal protection? And it's like, well, I do a lot of both. You know, I find it very fun and cathartic to shoot in general, you know, and but at the same time, I constantly carry. I'm carrying right now. You know, it's one of those things where I have to be when you I try and tell people this, the right to bear arms. You know, you got to pay attention to the bear aspect is it's actually you taking on something. You know, you have to become a more aware person. You have to, you know, just be conscious that you're carrying a firearm. Be always aware of what you would do in a situation, so you have to practice for that. And you know, go through a lot of different scenarios that may never happen, but you should be prepared for it. If you're just a regular person who happens to own some guns and they like to go out shooting, that's not necessarily something you're going to think about, but it's still going to apply to all the other aspects in which you enjoy of it. And I think most of it for most people, especially, you know, the people that I take out shooting that say that they're uncomfortable with guns, it becomes something they really like. It's a little bit, you know, it stretches a lot of people's boundaries. It's loud, you know, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of stress on you, the percussion, everything about it is kind of disruptive, you know.
But how many?
But
Let me ask you this, Chase, real quick. I might interrupt. How many
yeah.
first time shooters have you taken out who have said, "I hate this"?
Oh, so many. So many. But at the
No, I
same
mean, see,
time,
I would say I would think it's the opposite, because
well, well,
everybody I've taken or have heard, they go out and they shoot. Oh, this is what I love. This is what
well,
this is about.
it's the aspect of like you have to get them to understand a little bit about what they're doing to get rid of that some of that fear. It's the fear, like just getting someone to get up and shoot a gun that's not even a gun. Like I use a SIRT pistol, and just getting somebody to come up and shoot a laser pistol, to line up the sights, to understand everything. They still, and I like that they have a healthy fear of it, but they still act like it's something that's gonna, you know,
Right.
blow up on them,
Well,
and that's
and
the
that's where
main concern.
that education component comes in, right?
Yeah,
You know, whether it's you on the range or us, you know, doing what we do, it's the education side of things that really helps people and understand. Hopefully helps people understand why we're doing what we're doing.
exactly. And at the end of that, that's when you know you see the shift in people. Is like so you take away that fear and you get them comfortable. You know, like
Right.
I use my wife because she's like the ultimate hype man. So I take her with me when I'm doing trainings, especially with women, because you know I don't even want to like I'll have her address them in a fashion that is best for them, but it's just how excitable she is and how much fun she makes everything seem totally gets people to relax, and that aspect gets them addicted. And I've had tons of people come into a training completely just fearful, not wanting to even attempt it. Like it's just so uncomfortable for them, but at the same time they want to be able to know that they could do it if they needed to, right? But by the
Right.
end, they're like, I'm gonna come do this all the time. I'm gonna come out here
Right.
once a week, and like, how do I sign up for a membership to the range? And it's like, that's what I like to hear, because I want you to be able to protect yourself. That's my main goal. Being an expert pistol and teaching primarily pistol. That's what I want is for you to be able to do that. Yes, if you want to go compete and stuff like that, that's great. But my main focus is for you to be able to be comfortable enough to come out, train, and just be comfortable with utilizing it for your own personal protection, because unfortunately, you don't have to be out in the wilderness for a dangerous animal to want to attack you. We're all
Yeah.
kind of in that realm of the
Right.
idea that, you're protecting yourself from, nature. And it's like, no, most dangerous animal is sitting next to you. And the scary fact is you're more likely to be attacked or killed from somebody that is related to you or in your direct circle than a stranger. And that's a scary fact to like think about, but that's why is you need to be aware that there's threats all around you all the time. Obviously, don't think that the world's just going to collapse on you, but be prepared for certain situations and all that stuff. Now, when it comes down to what we're going to be, kind of facing in this next, like, period of time, and many of the different laws that are going into place, what's the biggest thing for all of us to like, is there a way for us to all kind of like write in about our concerns, maybe like phone numbers? Like recently we just had this situation with the public lands, and everybody, I really loved
Right.
how everybody from all fashions, because we all love to go out and enjoy our public lands, and it doesn't matter what demographic you're from, we all agree on
Right.
that. So it was really an uprising of something that I kind of really enjoyed, just watching all this happen, and people, and it wasn't even like anger. Everybody just kind of came together and was like, listen, this isn't going to happen, we're
Right.
not going to let it happen. And so how does that same kind of thing happen, within the gun industry and the Second Amendment? Is there places that we can write into about regulations that we're seeing in our own states, the federal government? Do we need to call someone? How does that work?
As a C3 Chase, we can't. I'd say this is what I would recommend. If you have concerns in your state, then
Yeah.
contact your local representatives.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
That's how
That
you get the
yeah,
word out.
yeah,
Okay.
and
So just find out
beyond that,
who's your representative, and
right,
address them
right,
specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you have those concerns about
Right.
anything, feel free. That's why they're there, right? They were elected into position by us.
Where do we find out what's actually being like going on, as far as all these things that are in regulation right now? Is there a place where we can check it out?
I mean, I would assume the government website.
Okay. I don't know either.
Yeah,
I just
no,
figured
no,
I'd
I
ask.
don't know.
I have
No,
no idea, and I'm sure it's pretty spread out, sparse. I mean, like
yeah,
you said, you have
yeah. I mean,
seven
it's going to be a state
cases.
level or a national level. I'm sure there's plenty of places. Obviously,
Yeah.
Google,
Yeah, good. I
Google
mean,
might be.
the legal aspects when it comes down to firearms are just so expansive. It's kind of daunting in a way. I'm really, I feel for you guys. Like
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
mean,
how you do it all.
and then the we're fighting the good fight or trying to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And our website, saf.org, a lot of good information there as well. You can see what we're working on, cases where we filed, wins that we have. Like, those are always good releases, from my perspective, to distribute, because they're the good ones.
All right. All right.
So
I like that. I like that. And then I have a kind of like just this is a hypothetical question, but what do you think the world would look like if the NFA doesn't exist?
I don't know that it'd look like much different than it is now. The only difference is you wouldn't be having to register your silencer or your SPF.
I really don't
So
like paperwork.
no, I don't think anybody does. But I mean, that's a hypothetical question. I wouldn't even begin to
Yeah.
answer
No,
it.
it
But
just popped in my head. I'm like, a world without the NFA, what would that be like?
yeah,
Less paperwork, less
yeah,
trees dying. I don't know.
yeah. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Right on, right on. Well, I'm really glad that we got to jump on and have that conversation. Is there anything
Absolutely.
that you want specifically for our listeners to know about
Yeah,
yourself
I
or the
mean, just
organization?
yeah, follow us on social media. Second Amendment Foundation everywhere except Twitter, and we're at 2AFDN, two number, the numeral 2AFDN, and that's where we get a lot of information. You can find a lot of information through our social channels right now. That's the best place to keep up to date and up to speed on things, and our
And I
website,
mean,
saf.org.
yeah. And so, I mean, there's always obviously there's always things going on. Like you said, you got 7 just cases just dealing with the assault weapons ban, right? I mean, not to
Yes,
mention the 60 plus, I mean, probably
yeah,
cases that you have all over the United
yeah,
States. So you
and
guys
we
are a pretty
definitely,
huge
yeah. Go ahead.
foundation
Sorry.
as
Yeah,
far as, foundations are concerned when it comes to this type of thing. You guys are one of the larger ones, right?
right.
Yeah.
And it takes the support of your listeners, you and your listeners. It takes that support to really help us keep the fuel on the fire.
Right, right. And I mean, there's definitely a lot going on, and we all should do our part and get out there and make our voices heard. I mean, we are the people, we are the ones that regulate all this, and we need to be involved. That's the huge thing. It's
Absolutely.
like if we're not involved, then it's not going to go anywhere. And despite the fact that we have wonderful organizations like yourself out there taking on the good fight, we need to be as involved as possible. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted as much information about how the regular person, citizen, gets out there and gets a hold of this information, knows what and how to kind of address the situation from their own backyard. And that's what I'm excited about, and I hope that anybody who has any kind of concerns, when it comes to what kind of laws and regulations are currently happening, that they get with their local politicians and government, and figure out how to get that handled in their own way. So I really appreciate your time, Matt, and we'll talk here in the near future, and get some information from you, and hopefully get some new membership and stuff like that on your way.
Awesome. Thanks, Chase. Appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you.
Have a good one, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. There you have it. Great conversation with Second Amendment Foundation's Matt Coffey. And, I don't know too much about firearm legal issues and the different things that we're facing. I wish I knew more. Realistically, I should really, start diving into the different aspects of that things outside of my state. Utah's pretty lenient on most of their gun laws. Obviously there's regulations towards safety and things like that, and we have a decent what I would call you know fairly regulative CFP or CCW program. So with all of mine, I actually take them out shooting to make sure that they understand the full functions of the firearm. But you're still required to take a 4-hour class and go through all of those aspects, take a test, so on and so forth. So I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation. I learned a lot. I hope you all did too. And I hope that we all, really realize the certain things that are, in danger right now of us losing our rights, and or just even being kind of, stipulated towards certain aspects of not having the full right that we fully deserve. And so everybody get involved. Everybody get out there, look at your local regulations, and really make sure that you're in doing your part. And I'm really excited that I get to be a part of this, and get to be a part of your lives, and this movement, and everything that we do here on M42 Adventures and the Genesis. So hope you enjoyed that episode. Stay tuned for the next one.